So the meaning of a joint is a joint or articulation is the site where two bones meet. And usually when we think of joints, the main joint that usually comes to mind are the freely movable joints. Now, the fact that these are freely movable joints, that means they're not going to be quite as stable as some of the other joints we've talked about. Okay, so they can be unstable. And if you have knee problems, you can probably vouch for that. So freely movable joints, we're going to call those diarthroses or synovial joints. So that would be like your fingers, shoulders, knees, ankles, things like that are freely movable. Structures within a synovial joint, we'll use the knee as an example. In the knee, we're going to find articular cartilage of each bone. So again, that's the hyaline cartilage found on the ends of the bones. We find a joint capsule that's made of dense, irregular connective tissue. And lining that joint capsule, we're going to find a synovial membrane. And that synovial membrane secretes synovial fluid, which is a very slippery, slick fluid that helps prevent and reduce friction within the joint. And then we find these little sacs called bursa. Typically the sacs are flattened out, but if they become inflamed, they can fill up with fluid. And if you've ever had water on the knee, for instance, or nursemaid's knee it's called, that's an example of a bursa, usually the prepatellar bursa, since we're talking about the knee, that has become irritated, fills up with fluid, and kind of balloons out. And again, these are meant normally to help cushion the joint and protect it. And then we have our supporting ligaments. In the knee, we have a few extra ligaments. We've got the anterior and posterior cruciate ligaments. They help keep the knee from translating too far forward or too far back. And then we have our medial and lateral collateral ligaments, and those are found on each side, the lateral side and the medial side, connecting the two bones. And that's going to help prevent too much movement from side to side. Okay, types of movement. Types of movement of a freely movable joint, and as you can see, one of the bullet points had already popped up. And so let's go ahead and talk about that. Inversion and eversion. Inversion, if you think about your foot, if you're going to look at your instep, so the medial portion of your foot, that is going to be inversion. And you can go ahead and look at the picture there too. So inversion is tilting your foot to kind of look at the instep. Eversion is tilting your foot outward like you're going to look at the edge of your foot. Flexion and extension. Flexion, we're going to decrease the angle of a joint. So think about flexing your biceps, flexing your arm. If we flex it, we're going to decrease the angle. If we extend it, we're going to increase the angle. So picture extending your arm out in front of you. That joint is your elbow joint is at 180 degrees. As you begin to flex your arm, it'll come up to maybe 90 degrees and then 45 degrees. Again, we're decreasing the angle, so that's flexion. Abduction and adduction. Again, I say abduction because abduction and adduction sound quite a bit the same. So, abduction, if somebody is abducted, what happens to them? They get taken away. So, abduction is away from the midline of the body, where adduction, we're going to add it toward the midline of the body. Okay? And again, refer to the picture. And we discussed inversion and eversion. Supination and pronation. Supination. Picture putting your hand out, palm up, to take a bowl of soup. So that's supination. Pronation, you're turning your hand over, exposing the back of your hand. Now it's prone to being smacked. So supination, palm up to take some soup. pronation, your hand is back of the hand is facing up, and it's prone to getting whacked. Circumduction is a kind of a rotation. Again, if you take a look at the picture, you'll see an example of circumduction. And what's not listed on here is dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Dorsiflexion is pointing your toes up, and at the ankle, so you're bringing the ankle up, and plantar flexion is at the ankle, pointing your toes down.